All right, so this video is going to be about graphing rational functions. So I've got this rational function x plus 1 divided by x squared minus 1. So in order for us to be able to graph rational functions, we need to identify horizontals, verticals, holes, x-intercepts, and y-intercepts. The first thing that we should always try to identify is any kind of hole. So I'm going to go ahead and factor. And if there are any common factors that divide out, that's a hole. So I've got 1 over x minus 1. That's the function that we're going to go ahead and graph. Now, I do have a hole, and the factor that we divided out was x plus 1, which means my x value is negative 1. Now, I need to plug that back into my function. And when you do that, you end up getting negative 1/2. So I'm going to go ahead and start to plot as much information as I can. And before I plot, though, this is a point, and when it's a hole, we're going to make that an open circle, not a closed circle, not a closed point. All right, I'm going to identify my vertical asymptote. My vertical asymptote, my factor is x minus 1, which means my value is x equals 1. That's my vertical asymptote. And my horizontal is bottom, so it is y equals 0. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and start to draw in these horizontals and vertical asymptotes. So my horizontal asymptote is right here at y equals 0. And then I'm going to say x equals 1 right here. So there's my horizontal and my vertical asymptotes. Now the next part is us actually graphing this stuff. The first thing that I can graph is my hole. It's at negative 1, negative 1/2. So I'm going to say that my hole is right about there. Now the next couple pieces that we can get is possibly x-intercepts and y-intercepts. Right? So an x-intercept is when y equals 0. So I'm going to take my function 1 over x minus 1, set it equal to 0. But remember, the only time my fraction can ever equal 0 is if my numerator is equal to 0. But 1 cannot equal 0. So we do not have an x-intercept in this case. Now for my y-intercept, I'm just going to go ahead and plug in 0 for x. So 1 over 0 minus 1. This gets me negative 1, so I do have a y-intercept at 0, negative 1. And I'll say that that y-intercept is right about there. Now, in order for us to graph, our vertical asymptote cuts our picture into two halves, a left half and a right half. You can see that I've got 2 points on the left half. Now, when you graph this stuff, I want you to ride those asymptotes. So we're going to connect this hole and that point. I'm going to pick my pen up, get to the other side of the hole, and then I'm going to ride that asymptote. And then I'm going to ride from this filled in point down along that asymptote. So ride those asymptotes. Now that's only half of my picture. There's another half. Now in order to figure out what that other half is, I'm going to pick a point just to the right of that vertical asymptote. So I'm going to use x equals 2. And when x equals 2, y is going to equal a value. Once I figure out where that point is, it's going to help me figure out how to plot that second half of my picture. All right, so 1 all over 2 minus 1. That's 1 divided by 1, which is 1. So I'm going to go ahead and plot that point, 2, 1, which is probably right about here. And now you can see that that's where my other picture is going to be, the other half of my picture. And once again, same thing that I did over there, I'm going to start to ride these asymptotes. So I'm going to ride down, and then I'm going to ride up. Ride those asymptotes. And that's how you graph a rational function with a hole, with your horizontals and your verticals.